Namaste Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Ram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. No, Namo Vishnu 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 Vishnu. So Jagannath Baldeswara Mai ki jai, नरसिम्हा भगवान की जय, पंचतत्व की जय, षड गोस्वामी की जय, गुरु परंपरा की श्री गोपाल की हरि। ओम ज्ञान तिमिरांधस्य ज्ञानांजनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं तस्मै श्री गुरु। So time is of the essence. So there are 30, almost 30 verses we have to discuss. So just start right away. So again, welcoming all of you for this Bhagavatam session during this auspicious month of Damodar. First, I will share the screen. क्षुत्परीतो यथा धीनः सारमेयो गृहं गृहं चरन् विन्दति यद्दिष्टं दण्डं ओदनमेव वा तथा कामशयो जीव उच्चावच पथा भ्रमन् उपरि अधो वा मध्ये वा याति दिष्टं प्रिया प्रियम्. So I will be discussing not all of the verses because very important ones, and then we can relate with each other, right? See, this chapter is entitled Talks Between Narada and King Prachnibarhi. So generally, when people are engaged in sinful or pious activities, they are not perfect in knowledge of devotional service. So we have seen this allegorical story, which is narrated by Narada Muni to King Prachnibari. He is also known as Barisma. He is especially meant to, why, he told this, to engage conditioned souls in devotional service. That's why he is narrating this allegorical story. See, the entire story, which is narrated by Narada Muni, is allegorically it is told, like Puranjana, right? So various things beautifully in the previous, I think it starts from 25th chapter. See, this is easily understood by a person in devotional service. But those who are engaged in, not engaged in devotional service, but they are engaged in sense gratification, they cannot perfectly understand this. And that is admitted by King Barishman, that is Parchibari king. So this 29th chapter describes that by too much attachment for women, one becomes a woman in the next life. But a person who associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he becomes free from all the material attachments and is thus liberated. That's what this in the beginning of the chapter. No, Narada Muni, he's saying in the second verse, you must understand that Puranjana, the living entity, Puranjana is nothing but the living entity, transmigrates according to his own work into different types of bodies, which may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or simply legless. So migrating into these various types of bodies, the living entity as the so-called enjoyer is known as Puranja. And the third verse says, the person I have described as unknown is a Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master and eternal friend of the living entity. Now, since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. So we just see this 31st verse, right? The living entity is exactly like a dog who overcome with hunger goes from door to door for some food. According to his destiny, he sometimes receives punishment and is driven out, and at other times receives a little food to eat. Similarly, the living entity, being influenced by so many desires, wanders in different species of life according to destiny. Sometimes he is high and sometimes he is low. Sometimes he go to the heavenly planets, sometimes to hell, sometimes middle planets, and so on. The 32nd verse is Dukke Shekatarenapi Daiva Bhutatma Hetushu Jivasya na Vivachchedah Sache Tat Tat Pratikriya. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The living entities are trying to counteract different miserable conditions pertaining to providence, other living entities, or the body and mind. Still, they must remain conditioned by the laws of nature, despite all attempts to counter these laws. See, the whole life we are trying, we are planning, and we are scheming in various ways to do what? To counteract the various miseries we encounter in our day to day lives. That is what we are struggling for. So, Prabhupada writes in the purport of this 32nd verse a very important point that why mental conditions cannot be improved. Mental conditions cannot be improved. Rupa says one should simply try to develop his Krishna consciousness and not waste his time trying to improve his material condition. See, actually, the mental condition cannot be improved. And Prabhupada says the process of improvement means accepting another miserable condition. And if we endeavor to improve our Krishna consciousness, the distresses of material life, no, it will disappear without any extraneous endeavor. So Prabhupada says one should simply try to develop his Krishna consciousness and not waste his time trying to improve his material condition. And he says, actually, the material conditions cannot be improved. The process of improvement means accepting another miserable condition. So he says, if we try to at least endeavor to improve our Krishna consciousness, then the distresses and everything of middle life, no, it will disappear without any extra efforts. So this statement, no, should be hammered in our minds again and again, so that it will instill at least a little particle of faith, in Shira Prabhupada to our rebellious mind. Very, very important. See, this lack of faith is the main reason for our stagnancy in Krishna consciousness. See, we may be so many years in Krishna consciousness, but we still, the taste is not developed. We still have these material influences. My Guru Maharaj used to say, when are we going to really mature in devotional service and understand this tangible fact, which is given in Srimad Bhagavad Gita 2.40? Neha Vikrama Nashosti Pratyavayo na vidyate Swalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So Prabhupada, the purpose says, but any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, or even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. Very encouraging statement Prabhupada is giving. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results. So that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. So this was the 32nd. Now the 33rd verse, Yata hi purusho bharam shirasa gurum udvahan tam skandhena sadhatte tata sarva pratikriyaha. A man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another. It's another wonderful point to understand. So, Srila Prabhupada, he being what do you say? Perfect seer, Amoghadrik, right? He has envisaged what is going to happen in the future. And he has very vividly, very nicely described the most perfect purport for this verse. It is possible only for a pure devotee to give a very perfect explanation of these transcendental verses. Prabhupada says in this purport, similarly, a human society in the name of civilization is creating one kind of trouble to avoid another kind of trouble. Right? See, in contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. But at the same time, we have created other problems. What are those? We have to construct so many roads. Yet these roads are insufficient to cope with the automobile congestion of traffic jams. And there are also problems of air pollution and fuel shortage. This we are seeing in Bangalore. Definitely we can very much relate, right? See, in one house, in one family, they will have two, three cars. So what is the problem? Difficulty we can envisage, right? So Prabhupada does not stop with the problems, but gives the practical solutions for these mental difficulties in a very beautiful way for all the dull brains, right, to understand and come to sanity. See, my Guru Maharaj always says, you can become sane only if you are with saintly persons like Srila Prabhupada. And being with Prabhupada means keeping in constant association of his so many imperishable transcendental books. See, just by touching his Prabhupada's one book, we are in touch with transcendence. And we do not realize it. This is the irony of our situation. So they actually reading Prabhupada's books is a very simple formula given by Srila Prabhupada. And all the acharyas, they say, read Prabhupada's books, read small books are there in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. This is a way we have to try to understand these things, right? So in the 34th verse, Nekantata pratikaraha karmanam karma kevalam dvayam hyap avidyopastram swapne swapna ivanagha. See, Narada is continuing to tell to King Prastibari, oh you who are free from all sinful activity, no one can counteract the effects of fruitive activity simply by manufacturing a different activity devoid of Krishna consciousness. See, all such activity is due to our ignorance. When we have a troublesome dream, we cannot relieve it with a troublesome hallucination. One can counteract a dream only by awaking. Right? In a dream, you can counteract it only by waking up. Similarly, our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. So unless we awaken to Krishna consciousness, we cannot be relieved of such dreams. For the ultimate solution to all problems, we must awaken to Krishna consciousness. See, Prabhupada insisted we follow simple living and high thinking. Thereby, we will be able to realize and work towards the goal of our life, that is Krishna. See, on the other hand, if we lead a complex lifestyle and which is devoid of Krishna consciousness, then what happens? We'll be running behind so many things, struggling a lot to acquire them, right? And later continue the struggle more to maintain them, right? If you buy an iPhone, right? It's very costly, right? So you should be you'll always be looking at iPhone. Instead of chanting, it'll be iPhone, or my phone. See, in this regard, there's a very nice story. See, once there lived a king who presented a diamond necklace for his daughter. So one day, the necklace was lost, and the king made an announcement that he will reward the person who finds it. So one of the king's minister, while passing along a dirty lake, saw something very shining. And when he bent down, right, in the lake, he found that it was the necklace. So in spite of the fact that the lake was very dirty, the minister put his hands inside the filthy water because it is something shining, right? And tried to grab the necklace. But to his disappointment, he was not able to get it. He tried various ways. So a very saintly person was passing by. See, he was very compassionate to this person. He inquired from him, what is the problem? So very hesitatingly, he said, how hard I am trying. I'm not able to get the necklace. The sage replied, smiled and replied, that he should stop looking into the filthy water and should start looking upwards. So the minister looked up, and there he could see the necklace dangling on the branch of a tree. So he had been trying to capture the mere reflection of the necklace all this time. So material happiness is just like the filthy lake. It's a mere reflection of the true happiness in the spiritual world. We can never achieve the happiness we are looking for, no matter however hard we try in this material life. Instead, what we should do, we should start looking upwards towards the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, who is the source of real happiness. And we should stop chasing after the reflection of this happiness, right, in this material world. The spiritual happiness is the only thing that can satisfy us completely. So that's why we saw in this current verse, 34th verse, right? Oh, you who are free from all sinful activity, no one can counteract the effects of fruitive activity simply by manufacturing a different activity devoid of Krishna consciousness. So that's why to counteract the distress of this middle world, one has to take on another distress condition. So both situations are illusion. So Prabhupada says there is no gain in taking one trouble to counteract another trouble. The conclusion is that one cannot be perpetually happy as long as one exists in this material world. The only remedy is to get out of this material world altogether and return home back to Godhead. So instead of endlessly endeavoring to find relief from the problems of love or life, on our own through material solutions, let us take shelter of the pure devotees and focus our minds towards Krishna and in serving Him, right, which will give eternal bliss. See in the 35th verse, अर्थे अविद्यमाने अपि संसृतेन निवर्तते मनसा लिंगरूपेण स्वप्ने विचरतो यथा. Sometimes we suffer because we see a tiger in a dream or a snake in a vision. But actually, there is neither a tiger nor a snake. Thus, we create some situation in a subtle form and suffer the consequences. These sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream. See, Krishna describes this material world as, in Bhagavad Gita, Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. That is, it is full of miseries and it is temporary. And since we are there in this middle world, we are in constant touch with the miseries. It is like if someone has fallen in an ocean, then he cannot avoid water, correct? That means he will be in constant touch with the water till the time he is in the ocean. So it is natural that he would be wet. Similarly, since we are in this middle ocean, Bhavasagar, we cannot avoid suffering or miseries because it comes at a part of the package, with our entry into this middle world. If we analyze very minutely, then the suffering would mean what you want, you do not get. Okay, please hear very carefully. Suffering would mean, see, what you want, you do not get, and what you get, you do not want. So we have certain expectations, and reality is something different. And because we do not get what we want, we suffer. Or maybe we get something which we do not want, and we again suffer. See, when I was traveling in North India some years back, I saw one sentence written on the back of an auto. It was written, लोग अपने दुख से उतने दुखी नहीं होते जितना कि दूसरों के सुख को देखकर होते हैं. Meaning, people do not suffer so much with their own miseries as much as they suffer on seeing the happiness of others. That much envy, jealousy is there. So this is another kind of suffering. See, for happiness in this middle world, there could be a full stop. There could be a full stop, but the list for suffering is unending. In Hindi, suffer, travel, no? Suffer karte hai na, travel. So as we suffer, travel in this middle world, we suffer invariably. But only in the human form of life, we can understand this. Prabhupada says that we cannot avoid suffering, but only transcend suffering. That's what in Bhagavad, this 35th verse we say, right? We saw this now. Sometimes we suffer because we see tiger in a dream or snake in a vision, but actually there is neither tiger nor a snake. So we create a situation in subtle form and suffer the consequences. These sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, all sufferings are due to material bodies. And he advises us to tolerate the suffering. Tolerate the suffering. Prabhupada explains that material existence is the cause of all our sufferings. For we do not suffer once we are out of the mental condition. The Vedas, therefore, enjoin that one should factually understand that he is not material, but is actually Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. Prabhupada further says that this understanding cannot be fully realized unless one is engaged in Brahman activities, namely devotional service. So, to get free from the mental conditions, one has to take to Krishna consciousness. This is only remedy. So, with the process of devotional service, one can understand and take the suffering as a mercy of the Lord to advance and progress in devotional service. Bhagavatam is full of description of devotees who, see, although externally suffered, but their suffering at every step brought them closer to Krishna. So this is the power of devotional service. If one realizes that he is not this body and wakes up from his sleep, he can understand the factuality and can transcend his suffering. If someone is sleeping, no, he can be awakened only by sound vibration. And the best way of awakening someone from material sleep is the loud chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is how we can make them awakened, right? Then comes 36, 37. The real interest of the living entity is to get out of the nescience that causes him to endure repeated birth and death. The only remedy is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his representative. Unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge. In the 38th verse, it says, O best of the kings, one who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness, and in hearing of Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. These two very wonderful verses. See, it says, Yatra Bhagavata Rajan Sadhavo Vishadashayaha Bhagavat Gunanu Shravana Vyagra Chetasah Tasmin Mahan Mukarita Madhubicharitra Piyushashesha Sarita Parita Sravanti Taye Pibante Abhitrisho Nripagada Karnais Tanas Prishanti Asana Tridbhaya Shoka Moha. So it says, my dear king, in the place where devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious, and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and becomes immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. See, how difficult it is to make people understand the simple way of devotional service, which is recommended by Srila Prabhupada. We always ask people to come to program, just have sit, associate this, chant, right? Have prasadam. See, even within the devotee circle also, there are so many different ways devotees choose to serve according to their natural interest and immaturity actually, which leads to groupism, competition, discrimination, right? Hence, see, maturity in devotional service comes when we see Krishna's hand in everything and follow the principles of the acharyas. So Srila Prabhupada did that perfectly. That is why he was so successful. See, Prabhupada, he never encouraged service without sadhana. Please hear very intently, very carefully. Prabhupada never encouraged service without sadhana. While on the other hand, he was not happy with people escaping the challenges of service in the name of sadhana. Understood? Just only seva seva, but not chanting or not reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. No, he doesn't encourage that. And also some people, because they are doing all the chanting and all, he is not doing seva. So perfect balance should be maintained between the two, wherein the sadhana, it lays the foundation of our devotional service by chanting, associating with devotees, attending Mangalarti, right? All this. So that is sadhana. It lays the foundation of our devotional service. So we should, and then automatically service sprouts as an inspiration out of the steady hearing and chanting. So we should never leave the sadhana first. That should be there. And by doing that sincerely and honestly, the service attitude automatically sprouts. Nobody has to force you to do that. Automatically come. See, no matter what others say, we should stick to our program of steady sadhana, chanting and studying Srila Prabhupada's books, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, and take up the service that inspires us. See, different people get inspired in different ways, right? Some they want to do uh, flower garlands to the deities. Some want to do cooking, right? Some want to sing kirtans, right? My Guru Maharaj used to say in one of his classes long ago, he said, we should become drunkards. We're puzzled, right, at that time and confused. What Maharaj is saying? See, because one of the regulative principles is no intoxication. But Maharaj continued. He said, we should become drunkards of Srimad Bhagavatam. We should study Srimad Bhagavatam with so much intensity that we should become addicted to it. And we cannot live without Bhagavatam. That's what he was meaning. And as usual, he always uses laugh loudly, transcendental laugh. In fact, he laughed so loudly after saying this and he said, we will go to Bhagavatam pub and have drinks party. And he expanded the pub as Prabhupada's Unlimited Bhagavatam. And he was laughing loudly and he said, if anyone comes to for us for anything, see, which is mostly some ulterior motive they come. He said, if anybody comes to us, we should safely tell them, see, we are all drunkards. Please do not associate with us. If you associate with us, you will also become drunkards like us. That is, we should be in PUB, in that pub, Prabhupada's Unlimited Bhagavatam. We should become drunkards of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this way we should keep our own program of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam chanting very steady. And not any external force should interrupt our flow of bhakti. See, it is not possible to get the full mercy of Srimad Bhagavatam unless we become addicted to it. And to become addicted to Bhagavatam, we should try to always meditate on the transcendental instructions, the prayers from Bhagavatam, and constantly find out ways to practice them all the time. That's why this verse 39 and 40 says, no, my dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness. So sorry, this is translation. So, my dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life. What are the main necessities? Basic necessities? Hunger and thirst. And become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. So we should drink Srimad Bhagavatam through our ears. Our thirst for drinking Bhagavatam should be so much that we should never be satisfied of hearing this nectarian, overflow of nectarian river of glories, of the pastimes of Supreme Lord Krishna and his devotees. So we should want to hear more and more. Just like how a drunkard once takes a peg, he wants to take more and more, right? Which we should take this to this Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the 41st verse, says, I'm not reading all the verses because, see, because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, he has a very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectar words of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Correct? No? Because conditioned. That's why in 42 to 40, these three verses, he says, the most powerful Lord Brahma, the father of all progenitors, Lord Shiva, Manu, Daksha, other rulers of humankind, the four saintly first-class brahmacharis headed by Sanaka and Sanatana, great sages Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Bhrigu, and Vasishta, and my humble self, Narada, all are stalwart Brahmanas who can speak authoritatively on Vedic literature. We are very powerful because of austerities, meditation, and education. Nonetheless, even after inquiring about Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom we always see, we do not know perfectly about him. See, even Narada is telling all this. They say, even knowing him about him, cannot know him perfectly. In the 45th, he says, Shabda Brahmani Dushpare, Charanta Uru Vistari, Mantra Linger Vivachinnam, Bhajanto na Vidu Param. Despite the cultivation of Vedic knowledge, which is unlimited, and the worship of different demigods by the symptoms of Vedic mantras, demigod worship does not help one to understand the supreme powerful personality of Godhead. Very clearly, he mentions here. In the 46th verse, Yada yasyanu granati bhagavanatma bhavitah sajahati matim loke vedecha parinishtitam. When a person is fully engaged in devotional service, he is favored by the Lord, who bestows his costless mercy. At such a time, the awakened devotee gives up all mental activities and ritualistic performances mentioned in the Vedas. See, actually, Srimad Bhagavatam, no, it is warning us, and it's confirmed by none other than the first living entity, Lord Brahma. Brahma accepts this simple fact that Lord is the ultimate cause of everything. Sarva Karana Karanam. He says in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. And he simply submits to the Lord very wonderfully in his prayers for creative energy. 3:9:23 he says, एष प्रपन्न भरदोरमयात्म शक्त्या यद्यत् करिष्यति गृहे तद्गुणावरतारः तस्मिन् स्व विक्रममिदं सृजतोऽपि चेतो युञ्जीत कर्म शमलं च यथा विजह्याम्. The Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service in the creation of the material world. And I pray that I not be materially affected by my works. For thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. See, the Lord is a benefactor of the surrendered souls. The word benefactor means person who gives money or other help to a person or a cause. So be it material or spiritual life, we can never be a benefactor to anyone. We ourselves are at the mercy of the Lord. So how can we become benefactor to others? We are mere instruments in the hands of the Lord. We have no potency whatsoever to make anyone perform devotional service. That's why this 46th verse we just now read, right? Prabhupada says, the purport, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, influenced by the merciful devotees' attempt to deliver fallen souls, enlightens the people in general from within by his costless mercy. So this by the mercy of Krishna only we are able to speak to others and try to convince them. So his activities are enacted through his internal potency, Krishna's. See, Lord Brahma understood that he has to execute the order of the Lord as secondary creator. He is not the primary. Therefore, Brahma is praying for the mercy of the Lord through his internal potency. So before Brahmaji embarked on this gigantic material creation, he is praying for the internal energy, which is pure devotional service, to execute the order of the Lord as the secondary creator. So the point to understand is When we are starting any service, we should imbibe this mood of Brahmaji by reciting this verse from third canto, right? 3, 9, 23. Very important verse. When anything we have to start, material or spiritual, whatever it is. So we should be praying. We should imbibe this mood of Brahmaji by reciting this verse and pray sincerely to Krishna. So Prabhupada and Acharyas, we should pray to them to empower us with the internal potency of devotional service. See what to pray. So Brahmaji also showing us by his example what we should pray. We should pray three things. Number one, only to be engaged in his service, in Krishna's service. Two, always not to get materially affected. And three, for giving up the false prestige of being the creator. We are not creating anything. We are not doing that. It's all because by Krishna's mercy. So if you understand this and apply this verse in this simple way, we will never be despondent or depressed or dejected in our endeavors of service. No. Prabhupada's transcendental punch to our ego is also very important to meditate. See, Brahma, who's only an assistant in the modes of creation, wanted to remain in his actual position as an instrument of the Lord instead of becoming puffed up, right, by the false prestige of thinking himself the creator. So, this is the way of becoming dear to Supreme Lord Krishna and receiving his benediction. Foolish men, they want to take credit for all the creations made by them. But intelligent persons know very well, they know well that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So all the credit for wonderful creation must go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So see, Prabhupada uses the word must, which means if any devotee is influenced by Krishna's mercy and takes the devotional service very serious in their lives, all the credit must go to Krishna. See, the whole point of Krishna consciousness is that we are nothing and when continue to be nothing. At the most, we can try to become instruments in the service of Guru, Prabhupada, and Krishna. So if we can really imbibe this one verse in our life and take it to our heart, our whole life would change. And that is a real sign of devotional service. In fact, my Guru Maharaj says that we should at least take one verse in our lives to our heart and practice it. And for practicing it, also we have to constantly pray to Krishna. See, we are supposed to practice, right? We should pray to Krishna. Please allow me to understand and put into daily practice, right? See, Maharaj says, you are such an insignificant living being. How you can consider yourself to be instrument of the Lord also? We are so insignificant. So how can we consider ourselves as an instrument also? He gave an example. An ant is telling that it is carrying one grain and it has to be given credit for carrying such grain. We will all simply laugh at its insignificance, right? We will not see also. So also the Lord is laughing at us whenever we are addressing ourselves as instruments of Krishna. We are so much insignificant living beings, right? So much insignificant. Therefore, we should not think as instruments of the Lord. We have to be humble. That should be our nature. See, we should not open our mouth and tell that we are humble. Prabhuji, Mataji, मैं बहुत गिरा हुआ हूँ and all this. Right? I'm very humble. I'm nothing. We should not say. We should not become like a showy humility, right? But we should behave humbly. That is our position. See, suppose somebody gives credit to us for our service. We do very good seva to Krishna. They give, appreciate us. We should consider that it is on account of Krishna's mercy that he has allowed us to be engaged in his service. And we are able to render the service nicely. We should not hear our own glories. And we should not go through our rehearsals at all. And we should not get stuck there. See, in the 47th verse, Tasmad karmasu barhishman ajnanadartha kashishu marta drishtim krithastrotra sparshishva asprishta vastushu. My dear King Barishman, King Prachinbari is also known as King Barishman. You should never, out of ignorance, take to the Vedic rituals or fruitive activity. Very important point is telling, which may be pleasing to hear about, right, or which may appear to be the goal of self-interest. You should never take to these to the ultimate goal of life. These Vedic rituals which are performing, right? Demigod worship and all these things is what is specifying here, Narada Muni. That's why he says, no, he's referring to Bhagavad Gita 2.42-43. Yami ma pushpitam vacham pravadantya vishpaschitah vedavadarata partha nanyadastiti vadinah कामात्मान स्वर्ग परा जन्म कर्म फल प्रदाम क्रिया विशेष बहुलाम भोगेश्वर्य गतिम प्रति. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Generally, people are very much attracted to the fruitive activities sanctioned in the Vedic rituals. One may be very much attracted to becoming elevated to heavenly planets by performing great sacrifices, like those of King Barishman. Now, here Sri Narada Muni wanted to stop King Barishman from engaging in such fruitive activities. Therefore, he is now directly telling him, don't be interested in such temporary benefits. In modern civilization, people are very much interested in exploiting the resources of middle nature through the methods of science. Indeed, this is considered advancement. This is not actually advancement purposes. However, but it's simply pleasing to hear. See, although we are advancing according to such concocted methods, we are forgetting our real purpose. Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore says, Jada Vidya Yata Mayar Vaibhava Tomara Bhajane Bhadha. Materialistic studies are the glare of Maya only, for they are an obstacle to spiritual progress. The temporary comforts of life experienced either on this planet or on the other planets, or are to be taken as illusory because they do not touch the real purpose of life. The real purpose of life is to come back to Godhead. Ignorant of the real purpose of life, people take to either gross materialistic activities or ritualistic activities. King Barishman is herein requested not to be attached to such activities. In the Vedas, it is stated the performance of sacrifice is actual purpose of life. A section of the Indian population known as the Arya Samajas lay too much stress on the sacrificial portion of the Vedas. This verse indicates, however, that such sacrifices are to be taken as illusory. Actually, the aim of human life should be to God realization or Krishna consciousness. Vedic performances are, of course, very glittering and pleasing to hear about, but they do not serve the purpose of life. Very powerful, very nice purport, which you can go through again and again. So then in the 48th verse, Somlokam naviduste vai yatra devo janardana ahur dhumra dhiyo vedam sakarmakam atadvidah. Translation says, those who are less intelligent accept the Vedic ritual ceremonies as all in all. Those who are less intelligent accept the Vedic ritual ceremonies as all in all. They do not know the purpose of the Vedas is to understand one's own home where the Supreme Personality Body lives. Not being interested in their real home, their illusion, and search after other homes. See, you always remember when during the COVID times, no? This lockdown happened. So when the lockdown is announced, the first concern of these workers, the migrant workers, they used to go to their respective places, was that how to go back to their native place. So even though the facilities in their native, very not much, right, very meager, they feel that it is better to be at home. So their drive to go back home was so intense that some of them even walked thousands of miles along with their children, and then they reached. So one of them said in an interview, घर जाने की उम्मीद की लालसा होता है. That is the hope of going home once awakened, no, makes you greedy to go. So once they reach their native place, they don't get a great life because there also their homes are huts made of mud. They get minimal food only. But still they prefer going there because it is their natural home. So in case of living entities, The Lord, He does not leave us in a foreign land, but sits in our hearts as Super Soul Paramatma and directs. Constantly, He is directing us. But the living entities in the middle world, they do not even know their natural home, the kingdom of God, spiritual world, which is full of opulences, eternity, bliss, right? Bliss, free from all troubles, no traffic trouble, right? Nothing, free, no pollution, and where the Supreme Lord resides eternally. That's why this 48 verse which us now is the 429 48. It states they do not know that the purpose of the Vedas is to understand one's own home, where the Supreme Personality of Godhead lives. To not being interested in their real home, they are illusioned and search after other homes. See, some fortunate living entities, no, they understand that the home is the spiritual world, but due to the various attractions in the middle world, they are not serious about going back home. That's why in the 55 and 56 verse, it says, my dear gentle friend, both you and I, exactly, I'll just show that 55 and 56 verse 1. Yeah. So here it says, my dear king, just try to understand the allegorical position of the deer. Be fully conscious of yourself and give up the pleasure of hearing about promotion to heavenly planets by fruitive activity. Give up a household life which is full of sex as well as stories about such things and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God through the mercy of the liberated souls. In this way, please give up your attraction for material existence. And in the 56th verse, he says, now king is replying, my dear Brahmana, whatever you have said, I heard with great attention. And considering all of it, I come to the conclusion that the acharyas, teachers who engaged me in fruitive activity did not know this confidential knowledge. If they were aware of it, why did they not explain it to me? He heard this, but he said, why they did not tell me? This is what he was asking. So Srila Prabhupada, so in this 49th verse, another wonderful point we should understand. Yeah. Here it says, my dear king, the entire world is covered with the sharp points of kusha grass. The strength of this, you have become proud because you have killed various types of animals in sacrifices. Because of your foolishness, you do not know that devotion service is the only way one can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You cannot understand this fact. Your only activities should be those that can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Our education should be such that we can become elevated to Krishna consciousness. So in this verse, Narada Muni directly insults the king because he was engaged in performing sacrifices that entail the killing of a great number of animals. The king was thinking that he was great for having performed so many sacrifices. But the great saint Narada directly chastises him, informing him that his animal killing only leads to his being puffed up with false prestige. Actually, anything that is done which does not lead to Krishna consciousness is a sinful activity. This statement we should keep in front of us, right? Anything that is done which does not lead to Krishna consciousness is a sinful activity. And any education that does not lead one to understand Krishna is false education. A wonderful statement. So anything that is done which does not lead to Krishna consciousness is a sinful activity. And any education that does not lead one to Krishna, understand Krishna, is false education. If Krishna consciousness is missing, one is simply engaged in false activities and false educational pursuits. Jai, Prabhupada's grand counsel purport ki jai. So beautiful, right? So these are. So Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita that killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as by the law of the Lord. So when the whole population becomes naradama, naturally all the so-called education is made null and void by the Supreme Personality of God. Right? So Prabhupada writes, the great sage Narada Muni directly insults king because he was engaged in performing sacrifices that entail the killing of great number of animals. So as can be seen all around, as the Kali Yuga is progressing, everything is going downwards. See, depression is all pervasive. Ultimately, it leads to frustration and people take such steps which harms others. So this is what is happening to everyone. See, the modern education provided in colleges and universities is not producing very sane population. The word education comes from Latin word educare, means to bring out which is within. That means knowledge related to spirit. So Prabhupada many times asked the universities, where is the department which is teaching the difference between matter and spirit? Real knowledge is spiritual knowledge, but nobody is interested in spiritual knowledge. So unless and until this is imbibed, we cannot expect saintly, any sanity and peace. So our material education just takes us away from Krishna. And we are going away from Krishna. We are becoming like dogs and asses. Shakti Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his poem, Vidyar Vilase, he says, Jiba ke koriye gada. This material education makes one an ass. So today's society is simply a society of dog, hog, camel, ass. It is given Bhagavatam. As the saying goes, as you sow, so shall you reap. If we kill other harmless living entities unwarrantedly, we will face the same end too. We will also face the same thing. If we want our next generation to be good, first we have to become good. If we want our child to become devotee, we will have to become devotee first. See, we should pray to the Lord that we can become an asset in society. First, how? First, by becoming Krishna conscious. Janma sartaka kare. Be a good example. And secondly, by helping others to become Krishna conscious. Karo para upakar. So this will definitely result in sanity and peace in the society. See, a wonderful purport and verse regarding the qualification of spiritual master and what his position and how to behave with him. This is in 429:51. 51st verse, next verse. One who is engaged in devotional service has not the least fear in material existence. This is because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a super soul and friend of everyone. One who knows this secret is actually educated. And one thus educated can become the spiritual master of the world. One who is an actually bona fide spiritual master, representative of Krishna, is not different from Krishna. See, so one who knows this secret is actually educated, right? That's what he's telling. So this verse, translation purport, is wonderful to meditate. This whole verse, 429:51, we should meditate this reading again and again and again. He says, no one who is engaged in devotional service has not the least fear of material existence. See, at the end of his winding up, see, we should be ready. My Guru Maharaj used to say that he was confident to tell, he was telling that when he was about to, winding up his pastimes, he was very jubilant and confident to tell. He was telling boldly that he has purchased a ticket to go to Goloka and he is ready to go. In all his lectures, he used to, very famous statement he used to make, we should be ready to go. Mujhe jana hai. It is so true, no, that we are yet to be engaged in devotional service because we are always fearful of material existence. We are always morose, worried, full of anxieties. So where is the question of being engaged in devotional service? And we proclaim ourselves as devotees. We are far, far away from calling ourselves as devotees. So this statement in translation, one who is engaged in devotional service has not the least fear of material existence. So how wonderfully Prabhupada puts us to reality in our devotion. Who can make such wonderful statements, right? It's unfortunate that we don't take shelter of Srila Prabhupada's books and call ourselves as initiated devotees, Brahmanically initiated devotees, and so on. But Guru Maharaj says all this in a wonderful lecture. So we should get initiated every day by studying Srila Prabhupada's books. So this fearlessness is because Supreme Personality of Godhead is the super soul and friend of everyone. So for us to become fearless, the basic understanding is required that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he is a super soul residing in everyone's heart and is a friend of everyone. Theoretically, we may accept this statement, but practically we have neither realized nor accepted the supreme authority of Krishna. So trying to be engaged in devotional service and hearing for a long time, we may accept Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead to a little extent. But realizing that he resides as a super soul in everyone's heart and is a friend of everyone is not so easy. So this is one of the main reasons for our difficulty in becoming fearless of material existence. So this implies that we have to accept Krishna as the supreme object of worship in all circumstances. Not only in satsang and temples, but even when we are exposed to material whirlpools, difficulties also. This is the most difficult for us to imbibe, right? So we should pray to Guru, Prabhupada, and Krishna to instill in us this drop of mercy. See, on our own, we don't have any capacity or qualification to develop to this level of transcendence, to take the shelter of Krishna in all circumstances. So one who knows the secret is actually educated, and thus educated, he can become the spiritual master of the world. So Prabhupada uses the word secret because it is confidential to realize the personality of God and Krishna. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, out of many thousands of men, among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Bhunam Janmanam Anti, right? See, for example, if we want to become, if we want to know the characteristics of a prime minister or a president of a country, we must either associate with his family or his close friend and confident relatives. In the same way, to know about the secret of realizing Supreme Personality, God as super soul and friend of everyone, we have to associate with his close associates or his eternal servants. So Prabhupada very wonderfully says in 2918 Bhagavatam, how to know the secret of realizing the Supreme Personality of God. He says a few points there, 4 points. Number one, with all conviction, believe in the personality of God without making efforts to realize him by speculative philosophy. Two, one should prefer to hear about him from Srimad Bhagavad Gita and later from the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. Three, one should head such discourses from a person. One should not head. One should hear from such Bhagavatam from authoritative persons. This Bhagavatam not from professional man or from Karmi or Gyani or Yogi. And four, or one must search out the association of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and hear from him the transcendental message of the Lord with faith and conviction. So this is the secret of learning the science or getting educated and understanding the Supreme Lord as a super soul in everyone's heart and friend of everyone. See, finally, coming to just another 2, 3 minutes. When you go to see a doctor, when you consult a doctor, you can't tell the doctor, I am consulting you. In fact, I am, frankly speaking, I have my opinion. Correct. This is what happens. See, the point to understand is, if you so let's say like that, then the doctor will say, then why do you come here? See, to the doctor, we are paying consultation fees also, right? So here the super soul does not charge consultation fees. It is free. But the point is, if you consult someone, you must be prepared to hear him. Otherwise, the meaning of consultation is not there. Otherwise, you are dictating to someone. Correct. So how can the soul dictate to the super soul? Those disciples who dictate to the spiritual masters, they are not disciples anymore because they do not want to obey. And that is true even when the spiritual master is physically absent. When Guru Maharaj says, when I am here, everyone is nice to me. In my absence, whoever wants to obey me, they only will feel that I am reciprocating. So this is the point to understand. That is why super soul is present in everyone's heart. But Avigyata was never heard by Puranjana. That's like all this time, the question is, are we hearing our spiritual master? If we hear our spiritual master, then he is always there. See, so the same point, at the point when Puranjana died, he remembered his wife and he became a lady in his life. Because of Avigyata's well-wishing tendency, he is born as Puranjani and gets married to Malayadwaja, the great king. Now, Malayadwaja is like a spiritual master because husband and wife have that relationship. And Puranjani served her husband very nicely till the end of his days in the forest. And because she took instructions from him, it is as good as Srila Prabhupada says, as surrendering to the spiritual master. See, when Malayadwaja died, Puranjani was left without his association and guidance. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that when that happens, the spiritual master is activated in the heart of the devotee. What a beautiful statement, right? She was left without any association, but she was always following him. So, see, he's activated in the heart of a devotee when there is absence of the physical nature of the spiritual master. How? The spiritual master and super soul are not different. The only difference is Krishna appears in the heart to direct us. And who does? And who does? He directs us to whom? He directs us to his representative. He is Chaitya Guru within and he is Guru without, outside. So there is no difference between him and Guru. So Prabhupada says in 4:21, consulting, just show that, sorry, 51st verse. Yeah. This is very, this verse we are discussing. So it says, consulting a bona fide spiritual master means consulting the Supreme Personality of God personally. One should therefore take shelter of such a bona fide spiritual master. Success in life means accepting a spiritual master who knows Krishna as the only supreme beloved personality. One should worship such a confident devotee of the Lord. See, once Prabhupada was asked this question, Prabhupada, you have said very often Guru is as good as God. So if you are God, then you can tell me what I am thinking now. Prabhupada very nicely said, if Krishna wants me to know, I can know everything about you. So Guru has so much qualification because even though factually speaking he is as good as God, he never feels that way. He always feels that he is a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Dasanu, dasanu, dasa. But the soul sitting next to the super soul, he is feeling he is God. He's thinking he is the king of the house. And when that happens, eventually the super soul's voice becomes silent. In one of the lectures, it is said that the super soul is actually Krishna and is actually the Guru. He's always telling you that you must perform the right action, the right duty, which is devotional service. See, ignorance of instructions makes the super soul silent. Every time we perform an action which is not in line with Krishna, does not our conscience speak to us? We know in our heart that we have broken some rules. And when we have done something that does not please the devotees and Krishna and Guru, we know. And if we continue to ignore the statements in the heart, eventually super soul will become silent. So Avigyata approved this point. So from the 4th canto, 25th chapter up to 27th chapter, Avigyata kept quiet because Puranjana wanted to enjoy. But when Puranjana came to his senses as Puranjani, then Avigyata did not become silent. Why? Because her heart had become purified by service to her husband, who is her Guru. So these are a few points which I wanted to share. Time is of the essence. So thank you very much. I will stop here now. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai Shri Prabhupada ki jinta Vancha kalpatarubyach kripa sindhu bhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnava ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this opportunity to glorify the Lord. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anand Prabhu.
Thank you, Ramachandra Prabhu. Thank you so much for giving so many insights.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhuji, tomorrow is also Ekadashi, Utthana Ekadashi. So, devotees, please join for the class, Ekadashi class, and how to read Srila Prabhupada books. Depending on your places, the Ekadashi day may be different. Like in US, Ekadashi is today. So, you please check. And best way to check is through the Vaishnav calendar. So in Bangalore, it is tomorrow. So that is why we will have the class tomorrow. So, Proji, with permission, can we do the Damodar
Yes,
Ashtakam?
yes, Prabhu. Please. Sure, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Very much,
Mataji, who
Prabhuji.
is Hare Krishna.
So, who will be doing the Damodar Ashtakam today? So, we have only one day left. So, please take the opportunity.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, shall I?
Yes, please, Mataji. I'll just share the slide. Mataji, you want to continue? Please continue.
Yes, Prabhuji. Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashodhabiyolukaladhavamanam परामृष्टमत्यन्तातो धृतगोप्या रुदन्तं मुहुर्नेत्रं युग्मं मृजन्तं कराम्बोजयुग्मेन साटङ्कनेत्रम् मुहुश्वासकं पात्रीरेखककण्ठ सीताग्रैव दामोदरं भक्तिभद्रम् इति दृक्स्वलीलाभिरानन्दकुण्डे स्वघोषं निमज्जन्तम् आख्यापयन्तम् तदीशिताग्नेशो भक्तैर्जितत्वम् पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्तिवन्दे वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षं वदिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरे सदापिहा इदं ते वपुर्नाथ गोपालबालम् तथा मे मनस्याविरतं किमन्ये इदं ते मुकाम्बोजम् अत्यन्तनीलये कृतं कुन्तलैः स्निग्धरक्तश्च गोप्या मुहुःशुम्भितां बिम्बरक्ताधरं मे मनस्याविरसमलं लक्षलब्धे नमो देव दामोदरनन्त विष्णो प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजलाप्तिमग्नम् कृपादृष्टिविशान्तिदिनं बतानो ग्रहाणे समामग्नम् इति अक्षिदृश्या कुबेरात्मजो बद्धमूर्तैव यद्वत् त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभजौ कृतौ च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मेऽस्ति दामोदरेह नमस्ते धाम्ने स्फुरद्दीप्तिधाम्ने स्वधियोदरायाता विश्वस्य दाम्ने नमो राधिकायै स्वधिया प्रियायै नमो अनन्तलीलाया देवाय तुभ्यम् नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्राजमनम् यशोधाभियो लोकालाघवमानम् परामृष्टमत्यन्तातो धृतगोप्या हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे दामोदर अष्टकम की जय। हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी।
Thank you, Swati Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you Prabhu ji.
Thank you for showing your altar. Thank you, Prabhujis and Matajis. Thank you for joining. We'll join tomorrow once again. Please do join. Grantaraj Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Ramachandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad Pranam.
हरे कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
हरे
Thank you.
कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anand Rupa Prabhu. Hare Krishna for this opportunity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for giving association, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for showing your beautiful altar. Thank you. Thank you so much. With permission, I am just closing the session. Thank you very much.